Good morning. Thank you for viewing this tutorial on the Caseload Manager for speech therapy. I've started you off here on the screen that shows the annual summary, which is what you'll get at the end of your school year. After you've input all your data, it'll all populate this automatically. So I have it divided into, well, here's your a little title and then your identifying information. Then I have it broken down into the kind of services that you probably did: identification, screenings, observations, evaluations, caseload, what you actually did during the year. And this is an example of my year last year. I just worked part-time, so these are the number of individual therapy hours, group hours, sessions, and of course if you work full-time, these numbers are going to be quite large. The results, meaning how many were dismissed, graduated, or moved, and then the other things that you did. So a little further down, you can see the entire annual summary is not here because it got cut off. But anyway, you can see it starts here to tell you the eligibility categories and how many were served in those areas. So you can kind of see here that I had one that had a developmental delay. And if you could see the rest of it, you'd see the rest were mostly speech language impaired. So then let's go to the actual database manager and see what that's going to look like for you. So the first thing that you're going to see is the read this first, which is just important housekeeping that you really want to make sure that you read. And here's your instructions, which are detailed instructions per sheet. So if you have a question about a sheet, go back to these instructions and it's probably answered there. So your first sheet that you're going to want to do is your master list, so that you're going to put each child's name in here. So we're going to put Joe Bob, and he was born on 12/3. Let's say he was born in 2010. So you can see that it automatically calculates his chronological age. We'll put him in as a second grader. He's precocious, and his eligibility, let's say, is specific learning disability. His last speech eval, you can see that there pops up a little calendar. So let's say his speech eval was the 9th of August, and then it's going to automatically calculate 3 years out for the next speech eval. Just for your purposes, you can say, okay, he's a language kid, so I know how many kids I have on language. His IEP says that he's going to get 60 minutes a week, and he is a Medicaid kid. So once you've filled this in for all your kids, and you can fit 30 per sheet, then it's going to calculate all your totals here. It's going to give you how many were served in each eligibility category and how many were served in each grade, and then your Medicaid yeses and nos. So that all is going to be used in that feed into that annual report that I started you off with. So all of this is automatic. This is a very basic schedule that you can use to schedule your kids. Okay, so then this one is your basic your daily tracker. So this is the one that really is the workhorse of the whole entire sheet. And this is what you're going to have open every day. I have this open every day that I work. So what I do is there are 4 of them, for one 9-week session. So this is the early fall daily tracker. You have a late fall, a winter tracker, and a spring. So you can kind of keep it in terms of quarters. Also, they're exactly the same, and they all feed into that annual report. So let's say Joe Bob was seen on this date, and this has a drop-down calendar in case you wanted to know how that date got in there. And I went in at 7:45, also a drop-down. And then I decided to see Joe Bob individually for 10 minutes. I saw him in a group for 20. I also met his parents for 15. So I'm going to put parent-teacher meeting here under other. Okay? Now, this is one day. So if I had Julie and Janice and Rocky, they would all be down here and they'd all be getting their hours populated for that day. So then you decide, okay, I left that school at 3 o'clock and it will calculate your hours. So that was 7 hours and 15 minutes. So then you're going to go to the next day, and you put your date in. That was the 18th, so this will be the 19th. And you're going to do the same thing in this one. So this is per day between each of the light blue lines. And then when you get to this black line, that's 1 week. So for me, working 1 day a week, this is my whole entire month. If you're working 5 days a week, that's 1 entire week. So then when you get, you're going to do this every day that you get there. And so there's a lot of these days here. So it's going to be the same thing every day. Very easy to fill that in. At the end of either the year or the week, what you're going to get here is a summary. So this would be for the 9 weeks period for the early fall. You can also go back any day and say, okay, how many EA and Rs have I done so far? How many therapy has Joe Bob, how much therapy has Joe Bob gotten? And these are weird right now because they were put in as strange numbers, but they normally will come out as like 30 or 60, something like that. So you also spent a quarter of an hour in the other, and that then tells you, when you say, well, what was the other? It was the parent-teacher meeting. So then a nice thing that you can do is, sorry about that, let's go back here. With all the hullabaloo, at least in our state, about district testing, is how many times do we miss a session because of all this district testing that is required? So at the end of the year, you can say, yeah, there were 15 sessions missed just because of district testing. Or a child that has a lot of absentees. Okay, how many times did Joe Bob not get therapy because he was absent or because of field trips or whatever? So then your winter daily tracker is going to be the same exact thing. Your spring's the same. Okay, so then once you're done with your daily trackers, you're exploring those a little bit, then you can also see that we have a kindergarten screenings sheet. So again, let's say that we screened Joe Bob. His date of birth was 1/1. Oh, let's see, that would mean he would be 11. Whoops, 1/1/11. Automatically calculates his chronological age. You can write in the test that you gave. I did not make a drop down because people use a lot of different forms, but I used the Flu-Hardy. And he was a monitor because he didn't really fail, but he didn't really pass with flying colors. And the date was on the 18th. Anytime there's a date, there's going to be a drop down. And then, of course, this will calculate and feed into the annual report. It's the same kind of, on the kindergarten screenings, you want to make sure that this is where you put your kindergarten screenings and not here on the daily tracker. Otherwise, they will count twice. If you screened a kid that was not a kindergartner, that would go here on one of the daily trackers. But if it was a kinder, because we kind of tend to like to keep those guys separate, this is where that goes. You do not have to use this one. You can keep it all in the daily tracker if that's what suits you. So then in the same fashion, you can just keep track of all the kids that you've dismissed. So let's say we're going to dismiss Joe Bob. He was in the 2nd grade, I think. And he was a specific learning disability. He was a language kid. The disposition was he was dismissed with his goals met. And here's our date. We're going to dismiss him on the 2nd, and any notes about that. And this, of course, will calculate at the bottom and feed into that annual report. So your next one is the annual report, which I have shown you. And this is, again, a weird number because of what I was fooling around with Joe Bob. It'll normally be 42, 16, 10.5, whatever. The only two that you have to manually insert, because everybody counts the current number of students on their caseload a little differently and how many they served a little differently. So then you can just manually insert those numbers on your own if you want to. If not, you can just delete those or leave them as 0 or not applicable. So it'll tell you, like I said before, all your services, which I detailed earlier. It'll tell you the breakdown of students served by the eligibility category. If you want to make a little note or two, then you write your name, your date, and you print it off on one sheet and you hand it to your administrator and look like super organized, because you are. All right, and if you're doing contracting and you need a bill, this is what I use. I have my, every year I put my contract rate in these cells, but since I don't know what your contract rate is and what your tax rate is, I left it open. That can also be customized for you. If you just email me for a small fee, I can just customize that for you and make that just really super easy to use. And then what I do is I copy this. I do one every month. I copy that. I stick that in a Word document, and then I send that as an email as my bill. So here on the sugar, which is a language sample analysis that I got from Owens and Pavelko when they did a presentation at ASHA in 2015, and they calculate they like to count the number of words, and of course an MLU. They calculate the words per sentence, the clauses per sentence, and they have norms for each of those areas. So what they do, first the thing you should do is go to this website, which is where they have detailed instructions on how to use Word to really help you streamline that language sample analysis, because Word has so many cool things like counting words and counting sentences and all that stuff. It just makes it super easy to do. So go to this website and download their instructions, which are free. And they generously shared these norms at the ASHA convention, and so I've just plugged them in here. And then what you do is, once you've done your word calculations and everything, and this is very simple. You just count the number of words and you put it in here. Then you record the number of utterances, and again, Word is helping you do this. You put it in here. And then you've got to separate the morphemes. That you have to do yourself, but once you separate them out, Word will count them for you, and then this value will be calculated. Then it gives you these ABC are the steps that you're going to need to do, and then the ones that are either in blue or yellow are actually calculated automatically. They also then, once these numbers are calculated automatically, will feed into these spots. So let's say this is the MLU, and let's say you got a certain MLU and he's a 4-year-old. So you're going to go over here and say, okay, how does his MLU compare to the mean? And here's your standard deviation. If you want to use that to calculate more than one standard deviation, and here's one standard deviation below the mean. But if you need to calculate more, you certainly can do that by using this standard deviation, and it will do that for total number of words, words per sentence, and clauses per sentence. So that's kind of a neat little thing to print out. You put the child's name up here, the date when you evaluated them, the date of birth will automatically calculate a chronological age. You can print this out on one sheet, stick it in with your evaluations, and again, look super organized. This is another little website which is just kind of fun that you can put that language sample into to give you some more little information on it. It's not like norms or anything, but it's fun to try out. So anyway, thank you for listening to this tutorial. I've enjoyed making it for you, and please email me with any questions that you might have.